So how do you make the move? And obviously some of you have done this already because you're fully ungated, and others of you are a mixture of the both and some completely gated. So I just wanted to talk through like how we approach this at Cognism and how you could go about looking at it at your organization. The first thing that you want to be doing is making sure that you split your funnel so that you can measure your conversion rates at every stage of the funnel through gated content. So by that, MQLs, sort of the MQL hamster wheel type generated demand, versus those people who are coming direct to you to request pricing, to request a demo, what I would call like direct intent demand. So by splitting that funnel, you'll understand very clearly the difference in conversion rates. So that's like step one. You don't need to change anything at this point. You just want to be measuring it and looking at it and understanding the implications for budget split and the number of MQLs you need, or the number of leads you'll need in each of those buckets based on the conversion difference. And obviously it'll be a stark contrast. You'll see on the direct intent demand, you need way fewer, but they're obviously much harder to get. And then on the gated side, much easier to generate, but you need many, many more of them in order to generate the revenue. And ultimately, that's what we all care about, is the revenue. And so once you've done this split, you can then go further. Like our first step was to say, okay, we know we want to move into an ungated model, but we still have a sales team who are relying on leads, like MQLs, content leads, to book meetings, which they get comped on and paid on. So it's not possible for us to just suddenly like switch off the tap. So we would just start siphoning off money from the most ineffective campaigns, the ones that are generating leads at the highest cost per lead. So we can generate like mid-market plus enterprise content leads at a rate of like $10. I think we even got it down to $7, didn't we, Fran, in some campaigns?
Yeah, James did, yeah. That's great.
Exactly. So when you actually just say, right, well, we're only going to invest in those campaigns where we're generating leads at like under $20, maybe that's your benchmark. It suddenly means that you can generate more for less. And then you take the money that you've saved on the underperforming campaigns, and you can say, I'm actually just going to put this money into this demand generation activity where I'm going to be ungating content. I'm going to be creating paid social campaigns just to drive more demand. And you'll be able to start seeing and measuring if you can see a correlated effect, an increase in direct demos with that increased spend. And we soon saw that. Like, it didn't take very long, literally a matter of months, for us to start seeing the correlation impact. And suddenly we realized that ultimately the revenue bridge that we had to like close between what we were generating on the content side, which would ultimately be 4 or 5 deals a month, versus what we could generate on the direct intent demand side when we put that money into our demand generation campaigns, was actually so easy to bridge, and it just made complete sense. So we just gradually made the switch. Like, we didn't just one day stop all gated campaigns and start all demand generation activities. We literally took it from most successful MQLs campaigns continue to run, take the money, repurpose, see the correlation, and then gradually move the money into the demand generation piece as we saw it working. But I should caveat this by saying that's what we did on the SMB side of the business. On the mid-market enterprise plus side, we still actually see content playing an important role. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to bring Liam on to talk about how we actually structured the ungating of all of the content on the SMB side, because it's all very well saying we ungated stuff, but like, how do you do that, and how do you do it effectively, and how, like, what steps did we take? And then I'll bring Fran on to talk about how we run it differently on the mid-market plus side of the business, and like why we're actually seeing that content does have a role to play, and that's why we actually have a mix of gated and ungated. So yeah, Liam, if you want to talk about structuring how we actually ungated things.
Yeah, sure. One thing that like I think is like important to recognize, and I suppose I didn't really until you start doing it, is if you can't just take what your original activity was and just ungate it en masse, because it doesn't engage the audience that you need it in the way that you need it to like start creating actual demand and move people into being able to like learn about Cognism, like in our case, learn about Cognism, learn about the things that we're talking about, and get them into a position where they feel like they want to submit a demo. you need to start looking at like creating and your content in different formats and creating it in different ways to optimize it for the feed. But to figure out which content then you go to ungate and which ones you push forward is a challenge in itself as well. And if you've done, hopefully, like even in your gated content, you've done a lot of research into like what your ICP wants to hear about and all of those sorts of things. So if you've done that bit and you've done all that hard work first, and you're not just creating ebooks off the bat, then you can actually use your findings from lead gen to really influence then what you're going to do for your ungated model, because you're going to have clear, and what we had was clear topics, clear white papers and ebooks and gated assets that did, and based on webinars as well, that just did like so much better than other topics, things that like our audience couldn't get enough of and really liked. And I think as soon as you actually ungate things, it actually, you actually, and you're not trying to get leads, it actually liberates you, because no longer are you like worried about, oh, you know, whether this piece of content is like close enough to what an SDR is capable of talking about, or moving it, or close enough in relevance to like your product. You're just looking to sort of like engage and delight your audience. So we did that. We realized that we like in our 2 segments, for example, for sales leaders who we're targeting, that cold calling just went down a storm across all segments that we promote across. And I think Fran will probably touch on that and like a learning with that one as well. But then, like I said, you can't just push your cold calling content like out. We had like a few really popular ebooks, but if we just ungated those and pushed those out through paid channels on social, we would I don't think we'd have the impact that we'd want to in feed and start to create enough of a conversation. So we had to look at then breaking that out and like creating videos about some of that content as well to make it more engaging. But then what we had was loads of webinars that like with long videos talking about this sort of thing, but not actually breaking it out into any snippets and using that, because that wasn't, you know, promoting an ungated video snippet before wasn't in the playbook. But now we had all this webinar content we could sort of like break up and start pushing out around that topic again. Then we had all these well-written articles and ebooks again that we can now break out into like nice looking like carousels and things. And, you know, before, like we try and use carousels to promote gated content, and it wouldn't really work because people are playing with the carousel and not clicking through to download the lead, like the content that you want. But now we want them to play with the carousel, look around, comment, like, and engage on it to begin to create that demand and that sort of like sense of like community around the top around the content. So once we found sort of these topics, we knew that was working. We started to create content towards them. We're like been building out and structuring different campaigns on each of these things, trying to create like a consistent message about what we're talking about. So then we cycled through that. So now we're like in like within our sales segment, we have like a cold calling campaign, and we're like constantly updating it with loads of different content that we're working on in a ton of different formats. And then we're working through, and then we found out like our ICP like talking about cadences as well. So we're moving through that, and then we've like created some additional messaging about outbound that we've seen popularity in. So we're moving and we're creating campaigns around that, structuring it with like different ads along the way. On LinkedIn, we like split these all out just because of how it's worked. So you've got video campaigns, we've got static single image ad campaigns, and we've got carousel campaigns. And on Facebook, we group these all together to allow Facebook's algorithm to do the work. Another thing that I think changes about it is on all of the platforms before, you're really looking for conversions before, and that's what you're optimizing for. But now you're going to be, we changed it. So we're not looking at like that, you know, optimizing for conversion, optimizing for a lead, optimizing for a website view, visit. We're now optimizing entirely for it to be looked at in feed for video and carousels particularly. So that means that you switch all of your campaigns up to like be serving maximum impressions because you just want eyes on at any moment, rather than it being about getting people to like complete a certain goal. We just want them to view and consume the content. And then on this as well, we have, that's like talks about all of our top of funnel content, but we also have these, what we would call our BOFU campaigns, which is like product focused messaging, teaching people a bit more about Cognism, and then also like ungated tours and things like this that like give people like a glimpse into what Cognism's about and they can learn about it. And these bottom of funnel ads are served to our entire ICP again. Amongst those,
I think that's a really important point. Like, we made a mistake when we started this by trying to, the classic marketing mistake, and say, okay, we've got top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, and like we basically tried to put people in stages of the funnel, but that's not how it works. Like, the buying cycle is just like doesn't work that way. And so what we actually found out is you get much more value from giving everything to everyone all the time. So that's like a really important point. And then I know we've got questions about how to measure all of this. So just for Harriet and Frederick, we're going to come to that at the towards the bottom of the session. We're actually going to have a really interactive share screen. We're going to show you how we're doing all of that. So hold on tight. And then yeah, Liam.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and like as I said, like we split it all out into these funnels, and then we realized that, you know, you can't, if we're doing that, then they're actually limiting the amount of people who see our bottom of funnel content. So we're limiting the amount of people who actually learn about Cognism, which is, we can't say that, you know, just because they viewed an ad that they're now ready to learn about Cognism. We don't know where anyone could be in the buying stage at that point. They could have seen something else. They could have just seen a competitor's ad, and now they need to see our bottom of funnel content. So that's why we did it. And when you actually see it, people have been asked before, like, oh, then how did the results do? Well, actually, we see like good engagement on all of these ads, just as much as top of funnel. People are interested, they're liking, they're like commenting on it. You know, it's not that you can ever predict at any one stage if someone's ready for that bottom of funnel content.
I'm going to have to move you on.
Yeah,
to time.
That's it. I'm basically wrapping up. So
basically, we were joking before we came on that we'd created a monster in Liam, and he's now.
And it's happened.
We'll let Fran come in.
Yeah.
I'll stop you there, Liam. Sorry. No, that's super interesting. So I guess from a mid-market perspective, it's slightly different. So we'd been building, we were well known in the SMB space. So the SMB space knew who Cognism were. We've got like a great client list. So for mid-market, and when I started working on that, I was like, oh, okay, so SMB are now moving towards this ungated model. And I was like, do we do that? Do we not? It was difficult because we don't have any awareness with mid-market enterprise companies. So it's all well and good saying, okay, well, what you need to do is ungate everything and you're going to get loads of inbounds. But if no one really knows who you are, then inbounds become pretty slow in the first instance, because the thing about this awareness piece is that it's amazing to do it, but it does take a little bit of time to gain that momentum. So you've got to like set your campaigns up and define your audiences and let those run. And time really wasn't on my side in terms of like how quickly we needed these results. So I had like a hungry sales team who had no pipeline, and they were looking to us to generate leads. So for me, it was more like, okay, well, how, you know, my first sort of, and maybe this was a bit of a mistake, but my first thing was playing it super safe. Maybe looking back, I might have taken a few more risks, but I played it really safe and ran the lead gen campaigns. I ran the ebooks. I did it all. And we got loads of leads through the funnel. And actually, results-wise, it wasn't bad. So these content leads that we get from ebooks, sort of, they're contributing to like 27% of our revenue for mid-market plus. However, caveat to that, the lead time is longer. They convert at a much slower rate down the funnel than inbounds do. So I knew, like, looking at the results, that I've got sort of a small percentage coming from content, but then the rest is coming from like paid inbound demo requests, and they're converting at a much faster rate and they're much better quality. So naturally, I'm going to want more of those. but I still want to keep the leads ticking over to keep sales happy. So it was all like, I don't know, sort of like a fine balance, like, of how we were going to make this happen. So I'd probably say, or I will say, that it was a probably like a 60-40 split between like lead gen and awareness 6 months ago, like when I started. I did play it safe. One thing though, like big mistake, was I went as far as gating like bottom of funnel content, and that is one thing that I would advise you not to do. Like, bottom of funnel is your advertising your product, your service, how amazing, what amazing results you have, your customer case studies, your snippets of like your best product releases. So it's beyond me actually now why we would gate something like that and ask for you to put your email address in when actually we want everybody to see it. So do not gate both your content would be my number one takeaway and biggest regret. And then going forward, we have, and as Alice said, I won't go on about this too much because we are actually going to show you exactly like how we've done it, how we measure it, how we track it. But I must say now, like 6 months on, we are slowly taking that content budget and moving it more towards what we call awareness, which is this demand gen piece, which are campaigns that drive inbound demo requests as opposed to these content leads. So we're turning the tap off, but just like probably a lot slower than SMB did. And I would say that was purely, two things. Like, one, we had no awareness in that particular space, and two, like, sales still had to have someone to call. Like, they had no historical pipeline they could rely on, or no like closed lost ops we could go back to. So yeah, they're the two main reasons really, and we're making that shift, but probably at a much slower rate than SMB. But yeah, I think it's been a good decision, definitely.